Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about how a head of household really does have a responsibility and a duty to punish their taken in hand.
But before we do that, we want to remind you to like and subscribe and hit that like button. And remember, when you subscribe, it makes me smile. So don't want to miss out on that.
And if you like what we are doing here, you want to get more content, dive deeper into the topic of domestic discipline, definitely check out our Patreon linked in the description box, or we also offer YouTube memberships, but Patreon is where we have a lot of exclusive videos for you to explore. So definitely check that out.
Absolutely. So, head of households, being your duty, that might have been a little bit of a shock when we just said it is your duty to discipline your taken in hand. That's not normally something that a lot of people hear, that's their mandate, if you will. But I will tell you where this comes from is really that's a mindset thing. And you may think to yourself, well, that seems obvious. I mean, we've been talking about domestic discipline, but really, that could be something that's holding you back. If you haven't made the decision, if you haven't said to yourself, wait, this is part of who I am as the head of household. This is part of my duty, is to make sure that she's being punished and punished properly. That could be in your subconscious of saying that you haven't made that decision yet. And that actually could be what's preventing you from moving forward and making some good decisions that you haven't been able to make so far.
Your taken in hand is actually counting on you to punish her. It is a mindset that you have to embrace as a head of household, just like a taken in hand has to embrace the mindset of submission and has to embrace the actions that come along with that. Part of embracing your mindset as a head of household is to embrace this idea that you have a duty to discipline your taken in hand and to embrace the actionable steps that are required to fulfill that duty.
And so again, this immediately you might be thinking, well, this again seems like a very obvious thing to do, but let me propose again this scenario. If your taken in hand especially has any question about, well, is he going to discipline me when I do X? Is he going to follow through with discipline when I do X? Or again, something that can be far worse, it's in the back of her mind saying, well, I'm not sure he takes discipline as serious as I do, or I'm not sure that he looks at discipline as serious as I am, because, and maybe she doesn't even know how to articulate this, because I don't know if he's actually thinking that his duty as part of my head of household is to discipline me.
I have to admit that I've been in that situation where
that's fair.
where there have been several instances where I know I've crossed a line, but it is a question of, is Coda going to take this seriously? Is this something that he's actually going to punish me for, even though I know I deserve to be punished? Is that something that he's actually going to follow through with? And it hasn't been until recently that question is becoming less and less, because Coda is becoming more and more consistent. But before we really had consistency in place, and before Coda really embraced this concept of understanding part of his role is to discipline me when I've earned the discipline. That's part of his role, and that's part of his duty as my head of household, is to offer that discipline to me consistently in a way that I don't have to question what are the standards. Because you can talk about it, you can say something's a standard, but if you're not going to back that up with the discipline when that standard hasn't been met, then is it really? And creating those questions in your taken in hand creates insecurity, not only in herself, but in the relationship, and ultimately in you as her leader.
I heard some of the head of household say, when you said, about my past, which there wasn't anything wrong with that. That was exactly what the truth was. But I heard some of them say, well, then what changed? Coda, what did you do that all of a sudden has made that transition? And again, it may sound very, very simple, but this is exactly why we're talking about it. It was the decision to embrace my role as the head of household, but with a few addendums on that. So making the decision, embracing that, but the first one I would say is realizing, oh wait, this is something my taken in hand has asked for. I'm not doing anything wrong by following through. So I'm going to embrace that role that she's been wanting me to embrace.
And needing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It's not just something that she's asked for, it's something that she needs. It's not something that she wants from you. It's something that she actually needs from you. When you enter into these relationships, you each come in with a certain set of needs in order for this relationship to flourish. A head of household needs to be able to assume authority. They need to be able to receive submission from their taken in hand. But a taken in hand needs that leadership. She needs that discipline.
So don't be afraid to then embrace that. Again, it sounds very, very simple, but I didn't realize, and you can say whatever type of outside influence that was, I'm not even 100% sure, but I had to really go, wow, this seems like a simple thing, but I really am going to embrace the fact that she's needing it, that she's asked for it, that she wants it. And so that's the first addendum. The second thing is once you choose it, you want to work extremely hard to just make that a habit. And in other words, make it who you are. Let it become part of your identity. You know, there are habits really are all they are, is they're something that becomes a part of you. They become part of who you are, good and bad, which is why it takes so hard to untrain some bad habits, right? Because we're trying to untrain something that we don't maybe necessarily like about ourselves and put something good in its place. So once you embrace what your role is and that you're taking in hand wants that and needs it, now you've got to start the hard steps of saying, okay, I'm going to make this who I am. So it's second nature. So that because here's why. She needs to see that it's becoming a part of you. Because I think, and actually I'll just pose a question to Aria as I'm saying this. As she's seeing you make this a part of who you are, she becomes more secure in your relationship and is more willing to follow you as the leader because she sees that you are making an effort for it to become a part of you. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes. I told Coda even just this morning that the more he becomes confident in his role, the more he just has embraced this identity of being the authority of our home, it has been so much easier for me to follow that, and it's been so much easier for me to submit to his authority, knowing that he feels very confident in that being a part of who he is and how he functions in our home. And really, it's just this it's this air of confidence that just is almost like a magnet, where once he really was able to embrace his role fully, it made everything else kind of fall into line and in a way that would just felt natural and very seamless. Where before we were really trying our best, and I definitely, as the taken in hand, I was really trying my best, but it was almost like trying to force a system that just wasn't working well, where we were doing all the steps, we were doing all the things, but it just felt like effort. And since he has really embraced this as just being a part of who he is and how he functions within our relationship, it just doesn't feel like it takes that much effort for everything else to fall in line.
And so, head of households, there's your first account testimony right there, that if you just work really hard for this to become who you are, as it just becomes part of your not only discipline, but a part of your personality even, you're taken in hand, you're going to be surprised how well she's going to respond. You're going to be surprised how then as the more and more you do it, how it just becomes a part of you. And what I've noticed, at least, is as I've been making this a part of who I am, I have noticed a change in her and our relationship getting better, which then leads me to the third thing is don't worry about outside influences that may not agree with the changes that you're making. And so this may sound a little harsh, but to a certain extent, apologize to no one. And what I mean is, don't be mean and rude. But if there's someone that you know that's noticed a change in you, the changes that you're making for the sake of your taking in hand, and they don't necessarily seem to like that because it's a newfound confidence or that you're radiating from yourself, don't worry about it. Don't apologize for it. Just say, hey, I've been making some changes in my life that's good for me and my relationship, and really, I'm not going to apologize for it. And you may not even get that reaction from people, or people may not even confront you with it. But the point is that you're going to start to radiate that confidence. You're going to people are going to pick up on the fact that you have changed and you've embraced this new part of yourself. Some people may like it, some people might not. But just remember at the end of the day that your relationship is what matters. Your relationship is the most important, and nobody gets a say in that. And so don't be afraid to go ahead and radiate that confidence and throw those criticisms aside.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When you started to really embrace this part of your role, when you really started to embrace this as part of your identity, did you feel confident in trying to assume that authority right away? Was confidence, let me ask it another way, was confidence something that you kind of had to fake it until you started seeing results?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is, yeah, confident. I didn't realize confidence is something that you practice, which is why I was saying you have to practice it and try to make it a habit. Because we think of confidence as just something that, okay, you decide something and you get confidence. That's not how it works, because especially if it's something that you're not used to doing, that's something way outside of what your normal personality has been, or way outside of what your habits have been. Confidence is just something that you have to slowly continue to cultivate in yourself. But what you'll realize is just like anything, the more you do it, the more that you just get up in the morning, and there are still times where I have to get up and say, as silly as it sounds, I'm going to be confident today. Today is not a day of lack of confidence, or something like that. Or there's been some times where I've programmed my phone to just come up and say confidence, so that I see it and I start to think of, yes, I need to be confident no matter what, because I don't want at any point my taken in hand, I don't want at any point Arya to sense, boy, I'm feeling uneasy because I know he's being unsure of himself.
I was going to say, I think that's kind of the key, right? Is to don't second guess yourself. I know for you that every time you go with your gut instinct, every time you go with like that first inclination that you have, it ends up being really good. Yeah. It's only when you second guess yourself that not only do you display a lack of confidence that kind of breaks down what we've got going on between us, but it is usually a subpar decision.
That's right, and she's absolutely right. What I'm learning is I think really just in the last couple of weeks, when I've made the very first decision that pops into my head, when I have to make a quick decision like that, it's been right. But when there's been a couple times where I've had to make a quick decision and I've second guessed it, and it I wouldn't say it's turned out terrible, but it wasn't exactly the right call. And so when she's saying, yeah, just embrace that and don't second guess yourself, it's absolutely true. And what you'll find is that's what confidence is. We have a lot of different definitions of what confidence is, but really at the heart of it, it's not second guessing yourself and being secure enough in yourself to say, you know what? I know I'm not always going to make a perfect decision, but I'm going to make the best decision in the moment, and I'm not going to second guess myself.
So in those moments where you're feeling unsure, but you've made a decision, you're not going to second guess yourself, you're going with your gut instinct, but you're feeling unsure about it. How do you go about presenting it in a way that doesn't cause insecurity in the taken in hand? Because you've done really good at this. I had no idea that you were ever like feeling like unsure of yourself. So you've done really good at this. So I wonder.
Thanks.
I'm just wondering, like, what tips can you give the head of households out there? Because I'm assuming that you're going to feel unsure about your decisions from time to time, if not a lot of the time.
What I've realized is if I let on to her at all that I'm unsure, I don't want any doubts going into her mind. I don't want her to start going through these emotional roller coasters because she senses that I'm not 100% confident. So what I've done is I've said, regardless of how I feel about this decision, I have to present to her that this is the decision. Now internally I'm going, golly, I hope this is right, but I'm not going to let on to her. And so that almost sounds like I'm lying, but I'm not. What I'm trying to do is spare her from this roller coaster that she doesn't need to be on. So she doesn't need to know, I'm making this decision, but I thought of 5 of them and I didn't go with the other 5. And I'm a little worried that I didn't go with one of those 5, but I'm just going to not let on to her that that's the case, because this is going to sound funny, okay? Or even maybe a little callous, and I don't mean the way it sounds. To a certain extent, it's none of her business what I'm going through. It's none of her business what the roller coasters that I'm going through. She just needs to see, this is the decision, I've made it, period. It's none of her business what the tapes are running in my head. And that sounds funny, but it goes back to that same thing of it's none of my business what anybody thinks about me. It's none of your taking a hand's business what it is that the decisions that you're making. The only thing she needs to know is that you've made a decision, you're going to stick to it, and you need to keep the rest of that stuff away from her. Does that answer it? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
So the big piece of advice there is great leaders of any kind, great performers, great anything. They're calm in the eye of the storm. And that's exactly what you want in this situation. You want your taken in hand as you guys are in the middle of the storm to look at you and go, it's not bothering him, even though on the inside you're dying.
Do you think that developing confidence, understanding your duty to fulfill your role, to punish your taken in hand, to be consistent, do you think that part of that is developed by understanding that you deserve to have your needs met in the relationship? Because I think that too many times we've been socially conditioned to prioritize, especially in our relationship, head of household being the man, taken a hand being the woman. I feel like in society we've been conditioned to prioritize the woman's needs in relationships, and I think that sometimes men just get into this mindset that their needs always come last, that they don't really get to voice their needs or have their preferences prioritized in the relationship at all. And so do you think that part of building confidence is understanding that you really do get to have your needs, your preferences fulfilled in your relationship?
Well, tell you what, I'll give you the short answer, and then I'd like to expand on it in 2 ways. The short answer is yes. The first a little longer answer to that is, you have to realize, you know what, it's okay for me to have needs, number one. And number 2, it's okay for me to say, I'd really like to have those needs met. Now, this is something you have to be careful of, because you can go too far the other way, where you are now being a person that's like, well, my needs should always be met, and now you're taken in hand as being oppressed a little bit, for a lack of a better term, or you're being more of a dictator. So you got to be careful, but you also have to, so you really have to work on thinking about, are the needs that I need met, are they unreasonable? And if they're not unreasonable, then it's okay to say that you need them met. But here's the second thing I want to say, and Aria was absolutely right in talking about kind of how society is structured, right, and how that has influenced. So I would say this, part of being what I realized is okay, that society says is not okay, but it is in the relationship to being a good head of household and being willing to deal out punishment and correction, all those things. It's okay to embrace that I have male energy and that I'm a male. It's okay to embrace that. It's okay to embrace what we naturally are to a degree, because I don't want this to come out as this toxic masculinity. But it's okay to say I can be strong. I can be decisive. I can be the kind of person that helps her feel secure. Because I kind of had a question, but it's also a statement for you at the same time. Do you think it's correct in saying that something you're taking in hand longs for the most is to feel secure?
Yes.
In the relationship?
That is definitely my biggest priority in our relationship, is to be able to feel secure and to know that Coda is strong and has strong conviction in his leadership helps me feel secure. It's actually the best source of security for me. And again, I want to reiterate, like Coda just said, prioritizing your needs as a head of household doesn't make you selfish. You just have to be very careful to balance your needs with your taken in hands needs and make a decision that is good for you as a couple. Like, that is part of your duties as a head of household too, is to make good decisions that benefit you as a couple or the entire household. Not to prioritize your needs above everyone else's, but just to know that your needs are just as important as they matter. And sometimes that means that you make decisions based on your needs and preferences because that is the best thing to do. Sometimes that means setting aside your needs and preferences for the betterment of everyone else because that's what needs to happen in that moment. So, and that's how you avoid becoming selfish as a head of household. And that's how you avoid becoming a dictator as a head of household, is really balancing and prioritizing what needs to happen for everyone's betterment. But definitely, I think, like, when you're setting up systems and when you are making requirements of your head of or when you are making requirements of your taken in hand, when you're setting rules, it's okay to do that to your preferences.
And see, what I used to think was, well, how could she feel insecure? I got the dog, I got the alarm system, maybe, right? I got the cameras, bills are paid. No, what I realized is that the security does come a little bit from those things, but it comes more from being able to take some burdens, some mental gymnastics, some worries that she has, that she doesn't need to be worrying about. Again, it's to a certain extent, it's none of her business. She needs for me to make it my business, not hers. And that's what helps her feel secure. And so it's in your confidence and in your leadership and being willing to say, yeah, I'm going to take this on and I am going to punish you when you go outside the rules. I am going to give a correction. I am going to get my needs met. And I am going to make sure that at the end of the day, we do things in such a way that everybody in the family feels secure, taken care of, and loved because of the leadership that you're putting forward.
I think that is a really good note to end on. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I hope that we were able to cover this topic in a way that didn't feel too blunt or harsh, but really got the point across, because I think at the end of the day, I think, we kind of veered off into this conversation about confidence and consistency. But at the end of the day, as a head of household, it really is your job to uphold your end of the bargain. And part of that is by fulfilling your role to punish and to correct and to set parameters. And the only way you can do that is by embracing who you are in the relationship and the authority you hold.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Let us know what you think about this topic in the comments. We really enjoy hearing from you, and we will talk to you next time.
See you later.